says 3 minutes after 2. So we'll call the meeting to order. And we'll let the record reflect that all members are present, either as themselves or through a designee. First item of business is the approval of the minutes from the March 13th, 2014 meeting.
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve DRC minutes of January 30th, 2014.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Wyatt, second by Mr. Buchanan, to approve the minutes of the March 13th, 2014 meeting. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, call the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Okay. Next item of business is ordinance number 1568. It's an annexation. And 1586, yes, I'm sorry. Ordinance 1586, annexation. I'm not going to try to read all the names of the property owners. 38.31 acres located on the north side of Artesia Avenue and on the east side of Lake Charm Drive. Can we hear from staff, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request for the DRC to recommend adoption of ordinance number 1586 that approves an annexation petition for approximately 38.31 acres located on the north side of Artesia and on the east side of Lake Charm. The applicant is Ellen Avery Smith with Rogers and Towers. The applicant has recently submitted a future land use map amendment and a zoning map amendment application, both to reflect the change of jurisdiction from Seminole County to the City of Oviedo. The property is currently designated with Seminole County Low Density Residential and is currently designated with the Seminole County R1 zoning, R1A zoning classification. Chapter 171 of the Florida statutes allows a property owner of real property in an unincorporated area of a county to petition the governing body of an adjacent municipality to annex the property into the municipality. The property must be contiguous to the municipality's corporate boundary and reasonably compact. However, the property cannot be annexed if the annexation results in the creation of enclaves. This annexation petition is a voluntary request by the property owner. The site is contiguous to the city's corporate boundaries, is reasonably compact, and its annexation will not result in the creation of an enclave. It is recommended that the DRC recommend adoption of Ordinance 1586. This concludes staff's presentation, and we're available for questions.
Do you have any questions for staff?
I have one, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Wyatt.
Within the staff report, the supporting document for the comp plan amendment, on page 6, under item 3, there's a reference to reductions in water and sewer capacity in table 3, and unless I missed it,
That's the complaint.
Yeah.
You're talking about the next item.
Am I? Did I jump on you?
Yeah. And just so that you know,
My bad.
Mr. White, it's a comparison of what's allowed in Seminole County compared to what's allowed in Oviedo at the maximum density. Maximum density for Seminole County low-density residential is 4, and the maximum for the city of Oviedo is 3.5. So it's the difference, it's the net difference.
I apologize. I see it's part of 1587.
Okay.
So you know
No
my question
problem.
is coming now.
Okay.
Mr.
All right.
Chairman, I have just one.
Yes, Ms. Correa.
There is just a typo in the ordinance 1586 as to the name of one of the owners. I think it doesn't match the, there is a 2.
Oh, the 2,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I see.
There may be different owners.
Before it goes to city council? Okay, so you'll need to get
Okay.
a permission from them to represent them as well.
No, we have all the owner's authorizations. I'm just clarifying the fact that the names may not match because different members of that family may have ownership interest in one parcel versus another.
Okay.
Okay.
We have all the owner's authorizations for all
Perfect.
7 people who
Perfect.
have some form of ownership interest in it.
Okay.
So is it correct that,
We'll
Okay,
have to check.
yeah,
I think
okay.
it's correct.
Okay.
It's just this one right there.
Yeah.
Needs to go. Okay. That's fine. Okay. All right, any other questions for staff? Hearing none, does the applicant wish to make any statements?
Team, if you don't mind. I'm Ellen Avery Smith, and I'm the applicant with Rogers Towers, and we're all here on behalf of Taylor Morrison, which is the contract purchaser of this property from the different owners that are listed in the various. And I don't even want to try, but they all signed owner's authorizations, and they're all in your files. So we appreciate the opportunity to be here. We do appreciate very much the hard work that you've all done. The staff reports are excellent, so we want to say thank you for all of that. And, again, this is the annexation part of the application, and the reason we're proposing to annex into the city is simple. You have water and sewer, and the county does it in this area. And so we're happy to, try to join the Oviedo family and avail ourselves of the services that Mr. Wyatt was talking about earlier.
Okay. All right. Do you have any questions for the applicant? Pretty much on an annexation, as long as Mrs. Pierre described to you the three-pronged test in the statutes. Is it reasonably compact? Is it contiguous? And does it result in an enclave? You want to achieve 3 yeses and a no, just like we have in this one, then pretty much the city has the ability to annex the property. So with that, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to recommend adoption of ordinance number 1586.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Wyatt, a second by Mr. F. to recommend adoption of ordinance number 1586. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, motion passed unanimously. Okay, next item is ordinance number 1587, which is the accompanying comprehensive plan amendment for this property that was just recommended for annexation. Can we hear from staff, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as you mentioned, this is the same property. The Comprehensive Plan Policy 1-1.4 requires the city to evaluate comprehensive plan amendments on certain criteria. That criteria is found in your staff memo. Staff has reviewed the application per that criteria, and the findings are listed in your staff, your supporting data inventory and analysis. The requested low-density residential future land use map amendment merely functions as a change of jurisdiction. The current zoning district for the subject property is Seminole County R1A. The property has not been platted, and based on the net developable acreage, the maximum utilization under the proposed low-density residential future land use designation with a maximum density of 3.5 dwelling units per acre will result in the development of up to 82 dwelling units. The proposed low-density residential future land use designation is compatible with the adjacent future land use designation, zoning districts, and existing uses of the surrounding subject properties. The Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board will consider the future land use map amendment at its Tuesday, April 22nd, 2014 public meeting. The City Council will conduct the first reading and transmittal public hearing of the ordinance 1587 on May 19th, 2014. It is recommended that the DRC recommend adoption of ordinance number 1587. This concludes staff's presentation, and we're available for questions.
Any questions for staff?
I guess I have one real quick,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. But now that after Ms. Pierre's comment before when I was off, I do see what she was talking about. I'm okay.
Okay. All right. Well, as far as the analysis of the impacts of the two land uses.
Yeah, I figured it out now. I see what she was talking about.
All right. Do you have any other questions from the staff? Ms. Pierre, I have one question. Is this in the urban or rural area?
The subject property is in the urban area.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Have any further questions? Would the applicant like to make any statements?
Sure. Again, Ellen Avery Smith, Rogers Towers. On behalf of Taylor Morrison, we agree wholeheartedly with staff's good report. And as Ms. Pierre noted, this land use designation is actually less dense than its companion in Seminole County. The property is currently land used for. And so it is consistent and compatible with what the land uses are, both within the city now and within Seminole County. And, we would note that staff has done the correct thing in analyzing this property for its maximum density with respect to public facilities, but we do not intend to develop 82 units, so it will be something less than that. We just didn't want to do a text amendment as well as a map amendment, so since there is plenty of capacity in public facilities, then the staff report is very good and reflects the same.
Yes, those wonderful state requirements for analyzing it, the worst-case scenario. We all love those.
Right.
Do we have any questions for the applicant?
I have a quick one. Has there been any preliminary work done as far as the site layout? Just consideration for access on this property?
The access will line up with the entrance across the street.
You can have one or two?
One.
Just one?
Yeah.
You considered two?
Not for size, not for property this size typically.
Consider it, please.
It's just,
Anything off Artesia?
Artesia and off of
Lake Charm. Yeah.
Panther and Lake Charm.
Panther and Lake Charm?
Just consider it.
Well, if we did,
well, there's a wetland. We can only.
That's what I'm saying. You have a
Is there
wetland
wetlands blocking one? Wetlands blocking one side?
Yeah.
Yes. We can
That's
only
different.
get to Lake Charm.
That's different.
We're trying to do a conservation area over the wetland area, so if we did that, we'd have to impact that wetland to
Right.
do an entrance off of
Yeah,
Panther,
this
which we
is
don't
a
want to do.
huge wetland on the southeast
There
corner,
is.
right?
Yes, sir.
If I remember correctly,
It
yeah.
also provides a nice buffer between us and the neighboring.
Yeah, those horrible people that live in the city.
No, I was talking about the rural. No.
I know them too. No, okay. But yeah, that's right. You do have some wetland issues on the south side, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly.
The south, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, even from a public safety standpoint, two entrances would make everything a lot
preferable.
better for us. Okay.
We'll have a wider one. How about that?
A wider one?
Yeah, it'll be divided with, 20 foot on each side. And then there'll be, an internal circular
Mm-hmm.
pattern.
We just like to request it when we can. So.
We can only get to Lake Charm Drive, I assume the one divided entrance is okay.
I suppose we will take it under consideration.
Yeah. Once you detail the location of the wetlands, I think that'll be a big help. You know.
The plan right now is to line up with, I forget the name of the subdivision across.
Reserve at Lake Charm.
Yeah.
Yeah, is to line up with them.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to recommend adoption of ordinance number 1587.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Wyatt and a second by Mr. Fuchs. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. All right, next item of business is ordinance number 1588, which is the accompanying zoning map amendment for the 38.31 acres that we considered in the other two proposals. Let's hear from staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request to amend the city's official zoning map to change the subject property from Seminole County Residential R1A to the City of Oviedo R1. The proposed R1 zoning district is consistent with the subject property's proposed low-density residential future land use designation. It's also compatible with the surrounding zonings and the existing uses of the surrounding the subject property. The Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board will consider the zoning map amendment at its Tuesday, April 22nd, 2014 public meeting. The City Council will conduct the first reading on Ordinance 1588 on Monday, May 19th, 2014. It is recommended that the DRC recommend adoption of Ordinance Number 1588. This concludes staff's presentation and I'm available for questions.
Do we have any questions for staff? Hearing none, do we have would the applicant like to make any statements?
Again, we thank staff very much for the good report and agree with its contents. One item we wanted to mention, since we were talking about density earlier, is there is an email from Seminole County, I guess, making a request about a buffer. And because this land is going to be within the city of Oviedo, we would respectfully request at this juncture that the city agree that on the northern property boundary, we meet the code requirements of a 10-foot buffer and not be required to provide an additional buffer just because of the environmental constraints on the south side of the property that Mr. Cobb has already noted. That takes away a lot of the land within the property that Taylor Morrison is purchasing.
Yeah, and they're not asking us to do that. That's not.
Okay.
I'm just bringing up the fact that Seminole County don't want to comply with it.
You got the follow-up email, correct, Deborah, from?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, it'll come into play during the preliminary subdivision plan. It is, we received an email from Tony Matthews, and he referenced the preserve at Lake Charm and the buffer they were required to provide.
Right.
Well, actually, they voluntarily provided it. He mentioned that it's not a required buffer, but if it were developed in Seminole County, they would be required to place a buffer on the property. It is not a required buffer. But it will come
Actually,
in.
though, that's, I talked to Tony, and the requirement today, if we were in Seminole County, would be 10 feet. So,
Charlie, can you give your name and address?
Charlie Madden, Moorhead, and Blunt, 430.
Thank you.
So he did clarify that. He pointed out what they did. However, today's code the Oviedo code doesn't require a buffer.
Correct.
Seminole County's code would be 10 feet. Respectfully, we're playing by your rules now, and that's what we want. Hereby would be even looking down the road at the PSP level.
Just a clarification, what is the buffer size that Seminole County is asking for?
10 feet.
Their code, if you were
Okay.
in the county, would be a 10-foot requirement. And your code does not require a buffer between agricultural uses and single-family.
Let me be clear about this. There was an email that was sent through from Seminole County to the city that originally requested a 100-foot buffer. Now, subsequent to that, the county has changed its request. We just want to be very clear that we do not, under any circumstances, want to give a 100-foot buffer because of the development constraints, particularly the wetlands on the south side of the property. So I just want to be clear on the public record, since Seminole County put that document into the public record and has since updated it, that we're just talking about meeting the city's land development code requirements, not the county's.
They wouldn't be able to make a motion to that effect under the zoning because it's not a contract
It's not
zoning.
pertinent.
So it would still come into play during the preliminary subdivision plan if you were looking for something concrete from the city.
Right, but typically, once it's in as a straight zoning, we would be subject to the land development code.
Exactly, yes.
Okay. Perfect.
Do you have any other questions? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to recommend adoption of ordinance 1588.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Correa and a second by Mr. Fuchs to recommend adoption of ordinance number 1588. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you all very much.
Brian, I have one question for you. As we move through this process, obviously you know the commission better than anybody. As we move through the process, is there any anticipated questions that you might expect or advise us to be prepared to answer as this moves through?
I'd be ready to address the buffer.
Probably is there a wall being proposed?
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Is there a wall being proposed, like a brick wall?
It's the
rural
agricultural
area?
It'll get asked. Be prepared for
You're
it.
right, I was there before.
Yeah.
Well, what do you
Well,
think?
we can look at that at a later date. We'll look at that later.
Well, it will come up.
I understand. I understand. We can address that on a separate, outside this.
I would, yes, I would be prepared, especially in relationship to the environmental concerns. But I'd be prepared to address the buffers. And, like Bobby said, I think Mr. White's pretty spot on, too. Look across the street on Lake Charm, preserve it Lake Charm. They'd probably be looking for some type of treatment like that as well. So,
As far as along Lake Charm Road, or?
possible. I mean, I can't tell you exactly what would happen, but, yeah, anything's possible. But, yeah, I would be prepared to address that. I would be prepared to, even though the zoning district allows for an 8,500 square foot lot, I'd be prepared to discuss anything over the minimum. They may be looking for comparables, those types of things. And those are usually the three key points that get asked about. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very
Oh,
much.
you're welcome.
Okay.
All right, we have one other item that we need to address. And that is ordinance number 1584. It's amendments to the Land Development Code, Articles 4, 18, and 24, as relating to flags and temporary signs. Can you hear from staff, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request for the Development Review Committee to recommend adoption of amendments to Land Development Code, Article 4, 18, and 14 relating to flags and temporary signs, which is ordinance number 1584. Staff and the city attorney have met on several occasions to develop ordinance number 1584. The changes proposed by ordinance 1584 consist of the following. It provides language in the definition of flags that provides clarification on what constitutes a flag and attention-getting device. And you can find that on page 5 of the ordinance. And if you go to page 5, you'll see under section 2A, there's a definition 1. It also provides for a total of 3 flags. And section 2A is only the definition. But if you go down to the bottom of page 5, section 3, which is on page 6, you'll see that it allows for a total of 3 flags on a subject property. The maximum height of a flag, of any flag, is 35 feet. The size of the flag is proportional with the size of the flagpole. The maximum size of a flag is 60 square feet and requires flags to be flown on a flagpole. Flag regulations have been relocated from Article 4 to Section 4.15 accessory structures. I'm sorry, it has been relocated to Article 4, Section 4.15 accessory structures. We have also on page 7 under Section 14.6, General Provisions, this was amended to address the structural integrity of signs. And basically, if a sign is damaged, the special magistrate can give the city the right to enter onto the premises to remove the sign. For temporary signs on page 8, you'll see that we have split temporary signs. On section 14.8, temporary signs, the first thing that it says is only one temporary sign shall be allowed at one time within this section. And what that does is it has split up. There was only one section called temporary signs, and all the temporary signs were listed. So as a result of some of the city council members who only want to see one sign on a property at a time, we had to split it up into temporary signs and other temporary signs. So temporary signs include the new occupancy, new use, interim and grand opening signs, attention-getting devices, special events, and temporary sales events. On page 12, you'll see that other temporary signs are listed. And that includes residential event signs, homeowners association signs, real estate, campaign free speech, construction, and A-frame signs. And those are not limited to the one sign per property limitation. Those are not limited. It's only the temporary sales, attention-getting special events, and new occupancy. And this is as, we were looking at how many temporary signs can you have at one time in our current code. In our current land development code, it does allow attention-getting devices. You can have special events. You can have the new occupancy, and you can have the temporary sales events. So we were trying to figure out a way to make sure that you can only have one of those signs at one time, that you can't have them overlap. And so this is what we decided, which was to split temporary signs into temporary signs and other temporary signs. The city attorney has reviewed ordinance number 1584 and had no legal objections. The ordinance 1584 is scheduled for Planning, Zoning, and Appeals for consideration on April 22nd, City Council first reading and public hearing on May 19th, and City Council second reading and adoption public hearing on June 2nd. It is recommended that the DRC recommend adoption of ordinance 1584 to the City Council. This concludes staff's presentation, and we're available for questions.
Okay. Do we have any questions of the staff?
I have one,
Kylie?
Go ahead.
please.
No, go ahead.
I would just suggest in the memo that we have, where you have the type of temporary signs, with the temporary signs / other temporary signs, and then change number 2 to number 1, change the order. First say that temporary
Yes, I
signs were
saw that,
separated
yes.
into temporary
Yes.
signs and other temporary signs, and then only one temporary sign is allowed at a time. That's all, yes.
Mr. Wyatt?
Mine just real quick. I just wanted to make sure under section 2, 1, part C, where it talks about definition of a flagpole, freestanding structure. Does that little definition, does it include like for garden flags? Like an American flag on a garden, like on a garden flag? If somebody mounted it that way? You know what I'm talking about? The little stake that goes in the ground? It's not a flag, it's not a pole per se. But
Is it one of the shorter ones, a shorter
yeah,
flag?
I have one. I'm
It's
just curious.
residential, we are not.
No.
I know, but it could be used that way in a commercial. Somebody could mount one. Saying somebody might. So, because they sell them.
Yeah. I would have to see what you're talking about. I can only imagine. But if it's on a commercial property, it has to meet the standards.
Okay, then it wouldn't matter. Okay. That was all.
Any other questions? Okay, I have a question. Explain to me again, the whole temporary and other temporary, how does that work? What's the difference?
For temporary signs, if you look at page 8, there are different sections now. So 14.8 is going to be your temporary sign. 14.9 is your other temporary signs. And
But
so
they're all temporary signs.
They are all temporary signs, yes.
So once again, what's the difference between a temporary sign and another temporary sign?
The types of signs that are defined under temporary signs and the types that are listed under other temporary signs.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I'm not understanding your question. Are you
I
asking me
am.
if there's a
If I
definition
can
for?
try to.
Sure.
One of the issues, but these are all temporary signs. They were all regulated
Okay.
under temporary signs. There was a direction from City Council that they didn't want to see more than one temporary sign that function at the same, has the same function.
Okay.
So to sell a product, like a temporary sales event, they could use attention-getting devices, they could use a temporary sales event wall sign, and they could use a temporary sales event freestanding sign.
Right.
They wanted to reduce that number to one.
To one.
So we tried to cluster all the signs that had the same function and we are naming, the suggestion was to name it temporary signs to limit one per quarter, 17 days per quarter.
Okay.
The other temporary signs are signs that we cannot regulate the limit, like real estate signs, construction signs. We cannot regulate for how long they will stay, because if you're still selling the house or renting the house, whatever, you need that sign. If it's still under construction, you would need that sign. So these are signs that we don't need to regulate, or campaign signs or free speech signs. We cannot regulate for how long they will be there. And they don't have the same function as, a limitation getting device. So it was a way to separate them. We can try to come up with another,
Another name.
classification,
Yeah.
because it is confusing in a way to call them. They are all temporary signs, and the sign code
Yeah, I thought-
before did that, classified them all as temporary signs.
And I first thought about residential, non-residential, but that's not the case either.
No.
It's just the signs that you can have, like your special event signs. You can get approved for a special event and have one freestanding and one wall sign under your special event signs. But then you can also apply for your temporary sales event sign. So you're able to get more than one type of temporary sign at one time. So we were looking at what types of signs that you can get that are temporary in nature that you can have more than one of, and try to limit it to only providing only one of those types of signs at one time. And so we looked at the different types of signs that were problematic in terms of being able to get more than one type of sign at one time. And so we came up with the new occupancy, new use, the attention-getting devices, the special events, and the temporary sales events, which tend to be, people want to get more than one of them because they want to advertise that they're open, they want to advertise that they're having an event, they want to and they want as much advertisements, as much signs as they can get. So we wanted to limit that, and this was based on City Council's direction to do that.
Right, and they could have either an attention-getting device, or a freestanding sign, or a wall sign, 17 days, once per quarter.
But we didn't want to place limitations on the residential event signs, like your garage sales, your open houses, your homeowners association events, which are all temporary, your real estate signs, your campaign free speech signs, your construction signs, your A-frame signs. Those are all temporary, and we didn't want to put any limitations on the number of we want to be able to make sure that they can get that as many times as they need.
They also function for a different objective, right?
They do.
They do. We can
And different
suggest to
nature.
have
No, I just
temporary
want to
signs
understand it.
type 1 and temporary signs type 2. It would be a way to classify, they're all temporary, but you have type 1 that we limit one sign for 17 days per quarter, and type 2 that we don't limit. Instead of all the temporary signs, if that sounds better.
I just wanted to understand it. Okay. But you're only allowed to have one construction sign, though. So,
I mean, you can have a construction sign. You can also have your temporary sales sign. I mean, you can do that.
right.
But anything under the temporary signs, you can only have one of.
Okay.
The idea is that you can have a construction sign and a real estate sign at the same time, but not, attention-getting device and
Right.
the type 1.
So I could have a temporary sales event and an A-frame sign at the same time.
Yes. And you can have a campaign free speech sign and an A-frame sign up at one time.
Like I said, I just want to make sure I understand
The logic.
the logic, because that will probably be asked, since they're all temporary signs. It would seem to me,
It's similar to the language that's in our downtown code where it talks about temporary and other temporary. It's similar to that language.
didn't say I liked it either. It would seem to me, and maybe this is me putting it into my own logic, but what you're calling temporary signs are actually attention-getting devices. Their purpose is to garner attention to the property. And then the other temporary signs are more of an informative type of sign. I don't know if that's a good logic or not, but it just
It
appears.
is, although attention-getting device is almost like a specialization of a temporary sign. Because usually it has
Right.
some kind of,
Yeah,
other feature that is really trying to get
Right.
attention, right? So
Yeah.
there is this,
well, that was the thing. I mean, when you talk about a sign that's a temporary sign until I get my permanent sign, or a grand opening sign, special event signs, temporary sales events, those are all to, get attention, attention-getting devices. It's all to get attention. But the residential events, it's more to guide people to the residents. And homeowners association is to tell folks about when the next meeting is. Real estate signs, those for sale. Construction signs. Same thing. So I mean, that's the thing. I mean, that I'm just trying to put it into my own logic that these temporary signs are really more about attention getting.
The A-frame signs are that way as well. The A-frame signs, you put them out when you have specials or when you want people to know. We have a special on this lunch special. Come to our restaurant. Or
So how would they be different from a sales event?
the difference with A-frame is that it has a permanent character, in the sense, if I'm a restaurant, I'll put that every day out with the new menu, for instance. So we don't want to limit that for
Not at
17
all.
days, one per quarter.
Right.
Because but you have the limitation that you need to place it next to your front entrance, so it has to be within 2 feet.
Right.
So it's not really to get attention from someone who is driving.
Do we have I'm trying to remember. There's a limitation on like when it can be out?
Business hours.
Business hours? Okay. So make sure. So it's temporary in time frame. It may be every day,
Yes.
but it may not be out.
Right.
If I may, I think the big difference with the first temporary signs is all of those signs in that category cannot be up simultaneously. It has to be one or the other. But any of those signs can be up with the other temporary signs.
Right.
May I ask a question? Going
Yes,
back to
Mr.
flags
Hughes.
again. When, you got in your summary right here, requires flags to be flown on a flagpole. Where is that actually specifically stated in here?
In the definition, and that's one of the things I meant to put into the regulations. I was going to have you all make that as a motion, that we make it as part of, I'll tell you where you can find it. It's in the definition on page 5. And because it's a regulation, we need to move it over to the regulation portion of it. It's on page 5. It's under 1, and it's the underlined paragraph where it says flags must be flown and displayed on a flagpole. So we can make it as, on page 6, as number 8. But it'll be in the definition section of it. I recommend that we put it in the actual regulations.
I have another question, Deborah. Where is this section 1 being inserted in the land development code?
Of section 1.
Where you have the
Lonnie has
regulations?
it. I discussed that with Lonnie and with the city attorney, and he wants Munico to decide where it should be placed. I can go back and insert it somewhere, but he wrote it that way so that Munico would decide where it should be placed.
He'll call us and ask.
Yes.
Okay.
So which one are you talking about? You talking about this?
Section 1, the legislative
Section 1,
findings and
where
intent.
we would insert number 8.
Oh. Oh, don't worry about section 1. He wants that into the code? He wants that
Yes.
codified? Okay.
If you'd like for me to go and put a section in there.
As far as where you're recommending that this new number 8, that becomes part of section 1415D. We're creating a new
It's
14.
not here.
Section 3, regulation of flags, amendment to section 4, land development code. Section 1415, paragraph, subsection D is amended to read as follows, and it says D, flags and flag poles. Then we would add it to that.
We can add it anywhere in there. I just said number 8.
Why do
That's
we
what I
have-
it on here.
That's a question. We've got this on page 6. There's this F, and it says boat docks. Why is that in there?
Because it's going to be placed in front of boat docks.
But it's going to be D.
Yes.
So what's E?
Yeah, absolutely right. And it may have been 415. Okay, so boat docks is D. So that was it was a mistake in the ordinance. E is boat ramps on here. So boat docks should be E.
Okay. in vote docs is currently D. And it will be changed to E.
Yes.
Is there any other questions? All right. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to recommend adoption of ordinance 1584.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Wyatt, and a second by Mr. Buchanan to recommend adoption.
Mr. Chairman.
Have any discussion?
Oh, go ahead.
We need to include the corrections in the
We
motion.
can offer a friendly amendment to the motion.
So
if you
I
like.
offer a friendly amendment to the motion to include the corrections that we cited. And that was to include item 8 in section 3,
Mhm.
that will define that flags should be flown in a flagpole.
Flown and displayed on a flagpole.
Flagpole.
Okay, so you want to add a friendly amendment to add in section 3 of the ordinance, to add a number 8 that would read, "Flags must be flown and displayed on a flagpole." Correct?
Yes.
And do you wish to
And
have,
the correction for boat docks, that should be number letter E.
would you agree that we need to show a D being stricken? Okay. It doesn't affect boat ramps, does it? It does. Does boat ramps go from E to F?
Yes.
And we need to show that as well.
Okay.
All the other corrections, right? All the
Yeah.
subsequent sub-items in this
Need to
subsection.
be renumbered. You may want to talk to the attorney to see if you can do it as a blanket statement that all of the rest are renumbered accordingly or something.
Okay.
Could do that. Okay, we have a friendly amendment to add a number, in section 3 of the ordinance, to add a number 8 to state flags must be flown and displayed on a flagpole, and then to renumber what is now known as F boat docks to say E, strike out D, add E boat docks, and then the staff will check with the city attorney about how we could state that the other items of that section would be renumbered. Does the motioner agree to the friendly amendment?
I agree.
Does the seconder agree to the friendly amendment?
I agree.
Okay, so the motioner and seconder agree to the friendly amendment, so it will now be included into the recommendation for adoption. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Okay. We have no more items on this agenda. No discussion items. Future meeting dates are Thursday, April 10th, Thursday, April 17th, and Thursday, April 24th, all at 2:00 p.m. in these chambers. It looks as though it is 2:50. We will stand adjourned.